Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and today we're taking a look at the top 10 best survival machetes that are out there right now. Let's check them out. Now, there's this common fantasy in so-called quote-unquote survival circles considering the one-tool option, which is something that's going to cover all your needs all wrapped up into one package. Honestly, this whole line of thinking is a little bit of a fallacy. It's kind of wishful thinking because, you and me being knife people, we're probably going to have multiple blades on us anyway. But if you had to boil things down, a machete can be versatile enough to fit that role. Now, I don't remember where this quote originated, but I heard it from my friend Ethan Becker, who relayed to me that a 12-inch machete is quite possibly the single greatest survival tool ever conceived. It's going to be compact enough to trek with easily, and it's a great balance between being able to handle both small and large cutting needs when the chips are down. And the best part is they're useful for so much more than just camping and survival. A solid machete makes a great tool for yard work too. It's a lot easier to use and more versatile, not to mention economical, than having a bunch of different, more specialized tools for every task imaginable. I've got a selection of options here in front of me, and I'm going to take you through them. Some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller than that 12-inch ideal, but they're all going to make great choices. So I'm going to start with a classic, and it's probably pretty close to what most people imagine a machete to be. This is the Ontario Traditional Cutlass Camp and Trail 12-inch machete made right here in America. Now, this is essentially the smaller version of the 18-inch US military spec machete. It's about as basic as it gets, and it's ready to get down and dirty. The 12-inch blade is made from 1095 carbon steel, and it's heat treated for optimal toughness as opposed to being a little bit harder where it would get you some more edge retention. Now, honestly, since most machetes are thrashed pretty hard, toughness is a higher priority than edge holding when it comes to these tools. These are blades that are certainly not going to be babied, and you want them to stand up to the abuse that you're going to throw at them. Now, carbon steel will rust if you don't take care of it, and so to that end, we've got a black zinc phosphate finish here on this blade. Helps protect it somewhat. But as far as I'm concerned, when a machete has a little bit of rust on it, I think it looks even better than when it's brand new. Now, the blade on this Ontario features a straight back, it's slightly wider towards the front, and it has a prominent belly. This kind of shape gives you a good profile for slashing moves, such as through thicker grasses and vegetation, as well as carrying a little bit more weight out at the front for chopping, although most machetes aren't really going to be heavy choppers in the first place, so you're going to keep that in mind. Now, this design is available with a saw back on the spine, but I prefer the plain back. It makes it more useful for using this knife as a draw knife or for choking up without shredding your hand. Now, the handles are a high impact polymer that are riveted to the tang. Now, the fit isn't perfect. These are known for being maybe a little bit rough around the edges, but it's going to be very easy to sand down smooth if it does happen to bother you while you're using the knife. Now, despite them being straight in nature, you do get a tab here at the back, which is going to help with your retention when you're swinging so that you're not going to lose your grip very easily. Now, in order to balance this out a little bit more for the finer work, you can see the sharpened edge doesn't start until about 1.5 inches, maybe a little bit in front of the handle, so you can choke up a bit there. It balances out a little bit better, so you're not fighting the weight of the blade so much as you cut. Now, even though the fit and finish isn't perfect, it is definitely decent for what you get, especially when you consider the price. It's just 19 bucks right now. That doesn't come with a sheath though. That would make a great project to make your own, or you can get a nylon sheath for just a few bucks more. All right, this next option is kind of a reimagined and more premium take on the format established by the Ontario. This is the Tops Machete .170. Comes in just under 125 bucks right now. Now, the blade is technically shorter at only about 10 inches long, but the handle is also longer too, so you have more grip options. And in fact, when you look at the overall length, it's pretty much identical to that Ontario. Now, the different proportions on the tops and the inclusion of an actual finger choil there means you can choke up even further on the blade more easily. It's even more balanced out for the smaller work than that Ontario is. And that's definitely very important if this is indeed going to be your one-tool option. And then when you need it, you can still get the same amount of swinging power when you're choked all the way to the back of the handle. Now, those handles are linen micarta, and they come with red liners. They're textured in ways so you get a little bit more grip just by their very nature, and then when things get wet, micarta has a tendency to feel a little bit tackier in the hand too. And then you've still got that tab at the back, so you have plenty of confidence when you're swinging this machete. Now, the blade itself is 1095 carbon steel again, and it's got an ash gray powder coating. It's got a little bit more flare at the front for a little more chopping power, but then a little bit of a drop to the spine here too, so you even have a little bit of a tip to work with. Now the sheath on this tops is quite robust. Got this nylon affair, MOLLE compatible on the back. You can see also we've got Tops' survival whistle kind of lashed there to the bottom on a little bit of extra paracord. And then on the front, slides in there, you've got a tab for retention here at the top, as well as two different pockets on the front that you can use to store sharpeners, fire starting gear, any of the other stuff you might want to have with you in an emergency or outdoor situation. All right, the next spin on the classic machete shape is the Condor Crocodilian, which is made in El Salvador, which is a $57 option right now. Now, this was designed by Joe Flowers, who, if you don't know him, he's a prolific designer and he's pretty much obsessed with machetes. He was responsible for a lot of Condor's best machete designs, and he actually also co-designed the tops we just looked at as well. Now, the Crocodilian has a roughly 12-inch blade, uses 1075 carbon steel, which is actually a little bit tougher even than 1095, and it's a little bit thicker in this case too. About 4.5 millimeters, which is a bit over 5/32 of an inch, and it's got a nice convex edge. And when you combine that convex profile with the pretty broad sweep here at the tip, you're actually going to get a fairly good amount of chopping power out of this knife. In this case, we don't have a separate handle though. As you can see, it's made from a single piece of metal that's folded around to form the handle, which is definitely going to be very durable. Now it does flare towards the back, so you have a little bit of retention when swinging, but plain metal can be a little slick sometimes, so they do supply this with a paracord wrap. It's going to add some grip thanks to the surface area of the ridges there. And of course, it does act as some emergency cordage supply if you need it as well. Like most Condors, it does come with a nice leather sheath, some nice thick black leather in this case. It's a friction fit, and you have a nice belt loop here at the back, which does swivel, so it's going to make it easier to do things like crouch down, sit down while you're wearing the machete. It's not going to jab into you or be quite as uncomfortable as certain other designs can. This next one we're going to look at is the last one that kind of riffs on that classic machete shape, but this design refines it a bit more, I think. It's the ESEE Knives Darien machete from their Expat series, coming in at the $70 price point. Now this blade uses 1075 carbon steel as well, and the finish they call Condor Classic, and they do that because in fact this blade is made for ESEE by Condor in El Salvador, and that's why it's only cost $70. If this were an American-made ESEE like most of the rest of their lineup, it would certainly be a lot more money. We've still got that straight-backed blade with just a little bit of a hump up here at the top. And it does have enough belly for that slashing and that weight forward swell at the front, but then it actually tapers pretty dramatically the closer you get to the handle. That actually makes it very controllable for fine carving, since you're not fighting the width of the blade so much. And then you've even got a subtle finger guard there for a little bit of safety. Now the handles are micarta and they come with kind of a rough matte finish, which adds a bit of grip, and it's also curved for retention on the swing. It also has the benefit of bringing the tip down a little bit when you do choke back. That should help you get a little bit more power when you are chopping. Now the sheath is serviceable. It's made out of tan nylon for mildew resistance. You've got a single simple strap loop here at the top, but because of the nature of the handle and the blade, it's not really going to hold it in too much, so keep that in mind. All right, now let's look at some other blade shapes, and we're going to start with the Cold Steel 13-inch kukri machete, which is a very affordable option at about $19 with a sheath. Of course, we've got this distinct angled blade shape with a very weight-forward design. Traditional Nepalese kukris tend to be heavier choppers as a result, and that carries through to this Cold Steel machete version too, despite that thinner blade that you get on a typical machete. Now, in addition to some extra chopping power, this is actually going to work pretty well on brush too, both on the swing and as you draw the blade back towards yourself, since that recurve allows more of the edge to cut as you're pulling back. Now, it's not just a good shape for swinging, this actually works really well as a draw knife too, because you've got plenty to grab onto with your offhand thanks to that wide blade right there, and that recurve can actually work really well, especially on round objects. Now the steel is 1055 carbon steel with a rust-resistant coating. Certainly very tough, but the edge retention is going to be lower too, but thankfully it's pretty easy to maintain even out in the field. Now the sheath is nylon, again, mildew resistance, and we've got a couple of snap straps here on the spine because that isn't stitched closed, because that allows the blade to actually make it in and out, because that wide end is not going to slip through just this narrow opening at the top otherwise. What's nice about that sheath design is you can actually get a full grip on the handle too, even when it's sheathed. And the shape on this knife has a very traditional flared cap at the end for secure swinging, but the materials are definitely more modern with a polypropylene overmold. One of the cool things about this and a lot of the other cold steel machetes that they make that are on the more affordable side is they may not be faithful recreations, but they do let you play around with a lot of historically inspired designs without spending an arm and a leg. I will say though, just a fair word of warning, sometimes their edges do need a little bit of work out of the box, and that's just the trade-off you pay for such a low price on these. All right, we're gonna go premium for the next shape, and this is the Fox Knives Jungle Parang, made in Italy and available for just over 140 bucks. Now with this Fox, you get a pretty stereotypical parang shape, but with a modern handle shape rather than traditional. And as you can see from this blade, kind of like a kukri does, even though this style isn't the same, this tends to be a little choppier as well. Thanks to the curved profile here rather than the recurve shape, this Fox makes a pretty good slicer too. The steel is 4116 stainless, which is not an edge retention champ, but it is fairly tough as far as stainless steels go. They make a lot of heavy-duty German chef knives out of this stuff, which should tell you something. Now the handle here, I think, has a pretty comfortable shape. You can see we have a ridged texture here. It's flared out quite nicely, and it's made out of sort of a two-tone material. You've got both hard FRN as well as grippier rubber around it. The choil you see here allows for those choked up grips, and you've got plenty of lanyard holes to choose from as well, including the capability to use my preferred forward lanyard. Forward lanyards are very safe to use. They come out the back here. You move your hand down through it and hold the knife like so. What's great about that is if you do happen to lose your grip on a knife, it's kind of just gonna stay put. Like the kukri, we also have a spine draw style of sheath, but this one is a lot nicer, made out of black leather with a good welt here, as well as a single snap loop there. Now for our next shape, we have another Condor with the Indonesian-inspired 14-inch Golok machete. An $85 proposition, and this one is pretty darn thick. This is gonna be the heaviest version we see here. You may not wanna carry this with you every day, but if you're looking for something heavier duty, this is gonna be a good option. Thanks to that trailing point design, as well as the flare at the front, this is going to chop and slash very well. But the most distinctive feature of this style is definitely the handle, with that distinctive bulb-shaped butt end. You can kind of think of this handle as a combination of the curved shape that we saw on the ESEE Darien with an oversized tab like you see on the Ontario, just on steroids. This gives you plenty of security when you're swinging, as well as the ability to angle that blade down a bit for your chopping. And then at the same time, unlike some aggressive hooks or bird's beaks that you can find on some knives out there, this shape is very comfortable. It's gentle enough that it doesn't pinch your pinky finger very well, which can be an issue with some of those other types of features. Now the height here at the heel is narrow, and you can choke up a bit to better execute those finer cuts, but you are going to be dealing with a little bit more weight forward on this design, so it's not going to be quite as nimble at those smaller things. Again, it's a Condor, so we've got a nice leather sheath, black, full welts on each side with that swiveling belt loop. Now these next two are what I consider sort of hybrid designs. They're part machete and part big knife. And the first is another from Condor. This is from Primitive Living expert Matt Graham. This is the Primitive Bush Mando, which rings up at about 115. Although this is a little bit shorter overall than the tops we looked at before, we get a similarly sized 10-inch blade and a little bit of a longer handle to kind of make up for that a little bit. The blade itself is that signature Matt Graham leaf shape made from 1075 carbon steel. It's got no coating on it though, so you're gonna wanna make sure you take care of it so that it's not gonna rust too badly on you. It's a simple shape, but it seems to work really well, and I can tell you that from experience because I've actually been playing around with one of these back at my own homestead as well. Now because you don't have so much belly out there near the tip to contend with, you can use that tip a little bit more effectively at certain quote-unquote bushcraft tasks, such as drilling, or choking up and even doing notches and fine carving with it. The handle on the Bush Mando though is I think what really shines. You've got natural micarta with that matte texture, and it's very comfortable. You've got your hollow tubes for lashing as well as lanyard usage, including that forward lanyard that I prefer. Now choking up behind the edge fills my hand very nicely and lets you get right behind the edge while still being protected thanks to that flare. And it's very balanced and very nimble at doing carving work back there. Then when you choke back, the end is sort of like a proto-Golok bulb. It gets you that little bit of extra leverage, it's very secure, and I can tell you from personal experience that you can really whip this knife through some material, especially with that tip as it just whistles through some stuff. Now choking back also lowers the tip a bit and puts it in a very intuitive position for pointing with the blade. Now, I'm definitely not a trained martial artist, but with that feature, as well as with how lively the Bush Mando feels in the hand, I have to think that it would have some advantages in that arena as well. The sheath here is pretty neat, and it's a bit different from most of the Condor stuff, as well as pretty much anyone else you're going to see these days. It is still leather, but we don't have a belt loop. Instead, you get a small tab of stiffened leather right here. Now, this allows you to slip the sheath inside of your belt with the tab hooking over the top to keep it pretty stationary. Now, this was initially designed this way because Matt Graham does like to dress in a pretty primitive fashion. He's known for appearing on TV in nothing but a loincloth after all. But for you and me, it allows you to quickly throw this on or off your belt as needed, and it's not restrictive at all. Now, this next is the shortest knife by far. It's the Gerber VersaFix, which is an imported blade. It's going to set you back about 30 bucks right now. The blade is a simple stainless steel with a nice stone-washed finish. That should help those inevitable scratches that you'll put on the blade to blend in a little bit. We get about 9 inches of reach with a standard size handle, making this the most compact design we've looked at today. I think this would make a good choice for backpackers. Not a bad choice if you want to carry just one edged tool as you trek, because it's not terribly heavy either, but you can still get some pretty decent swings in with it. It makes up for its shorter length by having a weight forward shape to help it hit a little harder, with a recurve at the back of the handle to keep it narrow enough to carve easily when you're back there. Similar to the kukri shape, this would also work well as a draw knife thanks to that wide handhold up top and that very same recurve that I just mentioned. Now, the construction is full tang with a molded synthetic handle on the top. It's got a good finger guard integrated here at the front and a V-shaped cutout that makes room for your thumbs to do a nice pinch grip when that's called for. Now, like a lot of survival knives out there, the VersaFix does have a protruding tang at the back. You can actually use this quite effectively as a tool for pounding on things, or even as a scraper in certain instances, although it's not as crisp enough as you'd need to do certain things like striking a fire steel. Now, there is an upgraded version of this design, which is called the VersaFix Pro, and it does have a more versatile sheath system, and it also comes with some relief holes in the blade and some texturing on the sides. Now, personally, I think the standard version is definitely the one to get, as I don't like the strength compromises that you're going to get from those holes in the blade, and the sheath that this one comes with is just fine. It's made of heavy-duty nylon with a spine draw and a Velcro flap, as well as retention here at the top, and it should serve you quite well. Now, if you really are looking for your machete to be your one-tool option, I think this final design has pretty much the most versatility of everything else out here on the table. It's the Overland Machete by LT Wright Knives. Now, as the Overland name would suggest, this knife is built to take you anywhere. I've got one of my own that I've put through the paces back home, and I wouldn't hesitate to grab it for just about anything. These machetes start at about $155, and for that you're getting an American-made, handcrafted quality piece. The broad pointed blade is about 12¼ inches long, and it's definitely got enough heft to hit like a hatchet on some harder materials. The steel is 1075, great compromise between your edge retention and your toughness. Now, even though 1075 will rust if you don't care for it very well, and we don't have a coating on this, each one of these comes with a custom patina that's applied by hand at the shop, and that layer of oxidation is going to help a little bit with rust. Now, because the Overland is essentially an upsized member of the LT Wright Genesis bushcraft knife, this machete does have a spear point shape. It's still got enough belly to slash through vegetation, but it also works great at the kinds of tip work we were talking about earlier, such as the drilling and the like. Now, it does lack a recurve, but still, with how broad the tip is, this is still a very conducive design to using it as a draw knife, and it is a little bit wider at the heel than some of these designs, but carving is still going to be accomplished pretty easily. The handles are a generous length, so you can choke up or choke back, depending on the task at hand. It flares at the back for retention, you got a finger guard at the front for protection, and thumb scallops for a nice pinch grip as well. You've also got both forward and rear lanyard tubes, so you can use whatever style of lanyard you wish, and it does come with some elastic shock cord installed at the back. There's a few different handle options that we carry. This one's the green micarta, and it's bolted and epoxied to the tang, and then shaped by hand to make sure there's no seams or hot spots that are going to raise a blister. Finally, we get a nice JRE Industries leather sheath. It's got a swiveling dual dangler style of belt loop here at the back, and a nice hook here at the front. Now, you can use that hook in conjunction with the shock cord on the knife itself, and that's going to give you some extra retention beyond just the friction fit. You've also got plenty of rivets for lashing, so you really can take this machete with you anywhere you need to. So that's it for our top 10 list of the best survival machetes you can get your hands on right now, and any one of them is going to make a good option for you. They're useful around the home, while hiking or hunting, or at camp. Pick one up now so that you're going to have one when you really need it. Now make sure to let us know in the comments which one was your favorite. If you have any other machete or one tool option that you prefer, make sure to let us know that as well. Now in the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these really cool machetes, we're going to leave links in the description that'll take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And as always, make sure you signed up for our Knife Rewards program while you're there, because if you're going to buy a machete, one of these, or any of the other ones we carry, might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. I hope you're all staying safe, sane, and sanitary out there. I'll see you next time.